Okay, so actually I'm on chapter 19 of 1 Samuel. And Saul spake to Jonathan, his son, and King Saul, and to all his servants, that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David. And Jonathan told David, saying, Saul, my father seeketh to kill thee. Now therefore I pray thee, take heed to thyself until the morning, and abide in a secret place, and hide thyself. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where thou art, and I will commune with my father of thee. And what I see that I will tell thee of. So there's been a hit put out by the king on David because Saul is jealous and covetous and very envious because the kingdom had been stripped from his hands and by God, and the spirit of the Lord has left him and has left him with a tormenting spirit. And he sees that every time he plots and plans and schemes and conspires to commit murder or harm against David, that David behaves himself wisely, and that the spirit of the Lord is even more evident upon him. And so Saul fears him even more. And so now Jonathan is trying to determine the heart really of his father, to make sure or unsure, or really try to solidify whether or not his dad is going to be good on his threat of killing David. But Jonathan loves David and David loves him, and they are going to work together because Jonathan is not going to let any harm come to David. Because if you remember previously in a couple of chapters, that Jonathan really symbolized David's ascension to the throne by taking off his robe, putting it on David, giving him his sword, giving him his girdle, and all of his princely garments, and put them on David. And so that happened a few chapters ago. And so now here we are where David is starting to hide himself to determine whether or not his life is really in peril as he and Jonathan believe it is. So verse 4, and Jonathan spake good of David unto his father, and said unto him, let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he hath not sinned against thee, and because his works have been to thee word very good. So Jonathan is really telling his dad, the king, please don't do this evil. David's done nothing against you. In fact, he has worked very well for you and toward you. For he did put his life in his hands and slew the Philistines, and the Lord wrought a great salvation of all Israel. Thou sawest it and didst rejoice. Wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood, to slay David without a cause? So he's asking, reminding his dad again. He goes, look at what David has done. He has worked a good work. The Philistines have been killed, and we saw God bring forth this great victory through him. And so why do you want to do this sin and kill him who is innocent of any wrongdoing against you? And Saul hearkened unto the voice of Jonathan, and Saul sware, as the Lord liveth, he should not be slain. So now Saul has a change of heart. Sadly, we know in the next few chapters it was temporary, right? And he says, I will not slay David as the Lord lives. And Jonathan called David, and Jonathan shewed him all those things. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as in times past. Okay, so everything looks like it's been smoothed out, like it's been resolved, right? However, hold that thought right there, because we're going to see it's not. Verse 8, and there was war again. I mean, they fought the Philistines for most of the Old Testament. and they served them, fought them, served them, were enslaved by them. So the Philistines are a big, big history that are kind of intertwined within the history of the Israelites. So there was war again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines and slew them with a great slaughter, and they fled before him. Verse 9, and the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul. And it doesn't mean evil spirit in that sense. It really meant a tormenting, distressing spirit. Because the peace of God and the presence of God had left Saul, God removed it from him. So the only other option is anything that is going to be opposite of the presence of God, right? So not something that was wicked, but it definitely was a distressing and tormenting spirit to Saul. And the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, and he sat in his house with his javelin. So we see the javelin again, here we go, in his hand, and David played with his harp. So David played music, and it soothed the torment and the distress of the spirit within King Saul. And Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin. But just a few verses before, he told his son Jonathan, he said, as the Lord liveth, he will not be slain. But now we see a few verses down that Saul has the javelin in his hand again, and he has the desire to really smite David with the javelin in the wall. So he wants to pierce him with the javelin in the wall, right? Killing him. And he slipped away, he meaning David, slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin in the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. So like I said, put a pin right there, because it wasn't resolved. It was kind of a false sense of peace, a false sense of reconciliation. King Saul just said that to his son because he knew the relationship that David and Jonathan had together, and he could utilize that because King Saul was a manipulator, and everything he did was for a purpose of gaining what he desired to put in place. It just usually didn't work because you can't fight against the plan of God. Duh. So verse 11, so Saul also sent messengers to David's house to watch him, to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, if thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. So even his wife, who was the daughter, she's the princess, right? She's the youngest daughter of Saul. She knew what her father was planning to do, and her love for David saved his life. So Michal let David down through the window, and he went and fled and escaped. So now this is where we really start seeing David's life for the next 11 years of him running and hiding, confronting Saul, confronting Saul, hiding in caves, and gaining support of the people as well during that whole 11-year process. Okay, and so, and Michal took an image and laid it in the bed, and put a pillow of goat's head from off the bolster and covered it with a cloth. So she put, the fake dummy like we used to do, some of us, when we'd sneak out of the house, and pump the pillows and put like a little head of football helmet or something like that to make it look like the illusion of somebody laying there. That's exactly what Michal did here. Mind you, her father's servants and soldiers are outside the house, watching and waiting, making sure that David never leaves, because they plan on killing him in the morning, right? And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, he is sick. And Saul sent the messengers again to see David, saying, bring him to me in the bed, that I may slay him. And when the messengers were come in, they burst in her house, okay, is what that's saying, because Saul wanted him dead in his bed. And when the soldiers were come in, behold, there was an image in the bed with a pillow of goat's hair on the bolster. And Saul said to Michal, why hast thou deceived me so, and sent away mine enemy, that he is escaped? And Michal answered Saul, he said unto me, let me go. Why should I kill thee? Now this was a really bold move on Michal's part, because her father is still king regardless if he's her father or not. He could, at the flick of the finger, have her been killed. She could have been beheaded and killed right on the spot for her disobedience and her for standing up for her husband, just based on the role of women in the time of Israel. And verse 18, so David fled and escaped and came to Samuel in Ramah. Samuel is one of the prophets and priests that probably was the most proficient and prolific prophet and priest in the history of Israel. And so David escapes and comes to Samuel in Ramah, and told him all that Saul had done. And he and Samuel went and dwelt in Naioth. And it was told Saul, saying, behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah. And Saul sent messengers to take David. And when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. Verse 21. And when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. And Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they prophesied. So Saul is trying to send messengers and soldiers to kill to kill David. However, again, every time he does that, his plan is thwarted by the power of God. And so instead of the soldiers being fighters, they become prophets, and they start to prophesy. And I'm sure speaking blessings over David, and the plan that Saul had never came to fruition 3 times. Then went he also to Ramah. So now Saul's like, I'm going to go myself. I'm going to handle this. I'm going to take care of it. But again, like I said, you cannot thwart the plan of God, and you can't fight against the plan of God and think you're ever going to be victorious, because it's never going to happen. So Saul thought he was going to be the big man, and he also went to Ramah and came to a great well, and that is in Seku. And he asked and said, where are Samuel and David? And one said, behold, they be in Naioth in Ramah. So he got the directions as to where they were. And he went thither to Naioth in Ramah, and the Spirit of God was upon him. And he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah. So he prophesied from that moment. The Spirit of God came upon him, and Saul prophesied from that moment all the way until he got to Naioth in Ramah. And he stripped off his clothes also, and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all the day and all night. Wherefore, they say, is Saul also among the prophets? So again, not only did his plan not happen, but God stripped him of his clothes, and he prophesied face down on the ground, naked, before the prophet and priest Samuel all the day and all the night. And so he tried to kill David with using him in the army. In every fight of the Philistines, it was never victorious. He tried 2 times to spear him with the javelin. It never happened. It wasn't victorious. He tried to send messengers to kill him outside of his wife's home and their home. Michal, because she loved David, saved him. And of course, also more importantly, it was the plan of God to save David. And then sent messengers, which were soldiers, 3 times to try to kill David when he was with Samuel in Ramah, and it didn't happen, and they prophesied. And then Saul himself thought he was going to be this mighty king and kill David. However, when the hand of God and the purpose of God is upon someone's life, as we see all through Scripture, and especially during the time of David's life, even when he sinned, which we'll get to, God's plan still is not thwarted. And so that is the conclusion of 1 Samuel 19. Until next time.